want to make a plug here and say we'll be happy to sign any books you guys buy also.
And you get free bookmarks with mine.
There you go. You just get a big thank you from me.
No comments.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Beyond Baroque Books for hosting us, and for Richard definitely for hosting us, and to all of you for coming tonight. Thank you very much. I don't think our guest needs too much of an introduction. Miss Alison Arngrim, most of you would recognize from Little House on the Prairie as her infamous role, predating King Joffrey, as the evil Nellie Oleson, the most evil character on television at the time. All right. Can everybody hear us okay?
Yes. Hello,
okay,
hello. Yes,
great.
in the room. We had no microphone.
That's true, but just want to make sure.
I can be heard in several counties, generally, and I just can't be heard.
Yeah, we both project pretty easily.
Just a teensy bit, yeah.
So who were your earliest influences in becoming a performer?
Oh, wow. Well, my whole family were in show business. You guys all know my mom. My mother was a cartoon voiceover artist. She was an actress on stage in Canada and radio, but she became Casper the Friendly Ghost. And she was Gumby, and she was Sweet Polly Purebred Underdog's girlfriend, and Davy of Davy and Goliath, which is also hysterical because then she's Davy's mother and Davy's sister and all of Davy's friends. And the guy who's Goliath is like the preacher and the fireman and the dad. So if it's a party and it's Davy and his sister and his mom and all his friends, it's my mother talking to herself 8 times. So, yeah.
Kind of incestuous for a religious show.
It's very weird, yeah. And all the shows, they all had like 2 people. So like it was this Gumby and Pokey and then Prickle and Goo, and it's the same 2 people. And all do it. So she was doing that. So I was around a lot of performers and actors, and I would watch movies and TV shows, and we knew half the people in them. When I was very young, we went to see a marvelous movie called Thoroughly Modern Millie. And yes, I totally wanted to be Carol Channing. She had like the bolos and all those guys and everything. But we went because we were friends with Beatrice Lilly. She lived at the Chateau Marmont down the hall from us. And Beatrice Lilly played the villain. She played the
Mrs.
woman.
Mears.
Mrs. Mears. She had the chopsticks in her hair, and she was chloroforming. Chloroform. She was human trafficking. It's a musical comedy, and there's like human trafficking. And it's B. Lilly is chloroforming people and shoving them in baskets and selling them into slavery. And it's kind of horrible. But this was like, and it's a musical. So my friend who took us to the movies to see her was the villain. And so it was starting really early. And I talk about in the book, I talk about her in the book, because she followed me home one day, can I keep her, basically. She was kind of a kooky old lady who was wandering the halls, and I was like 5, but she was like, Mommy, I found this lady in the hall. I got that crazy old actress. I talk about in the book that when I was really little, I watched Peter Pan. It had been the one with Mary Martin and Cyril Bachar, and they had broadcast it like a couple of years before I was born, so I was like 3, and it was like, I guess a rerun then. And man, I love that thing. It was the best. But Captain Hook was just like the best thing ever. So I kind of had this attachment to villains early on, sort of woo-ha-ha-ha thing going on. And we were joking about Vincent Price earlier. Yeah, big Vincent Price fan, big. Used to go see, Dr. Phibes and Dr. Phibes Rises Again and all of his movies. Even in the theater I would go as well. And, so I've always had sort of a thing for the villains and the big over-the-top characters. So yeah, so when I got in LA, I was very proud indeed, yes.
So when did you realize that your home is not the average household?
Oh man, probably like 2 or 3, like 4. I knew right away that my family was just completely bananas. And my mother was going to do cartoons, and everybody was on a TV show, or my father was working for Liberace, and so I did realize that things were different. Well, and then my parents would try to explain this to her, like the whole story in my book about not becoming a Girl Scout. I wanted to be a Girl Scout. I was going to be a brownie. You start the brownies, you become a Girl Scout. And my friends, several of them were brownies and scouts and going to me. And we went to one meeting, and they said, we are short on troop leaders. We can't start another troop or add more people until some more mothers volunteer to be troop leaders. And that's when my mother sat me down and said, okay, in order for you to become a brownie Girl Scout, I would have to be a troop leader. And I was like all of 7, and she said, seriously, can you see me? You're 7, you're not blind. Yeah, really? Think of just pause under it. And I was like, oh, no. She said, so I know you really want, I'm really sorry, but this is not going to happen. and because like I said, visions of her like trying to like glue things, and I was like, no, my mother was not true pleater material. That would have been a horror movie. So I was like, no, that would be bad. No, that's not your thing. So I didn't become a Girl Scout. So I knew we were not different. My mother always worked. She was Mrs. Arngrim at school, but she was Norma Macmillan pretty much all the time. I didn't even realize that it was a thing that people took their husband's name until I was older. I assumed all women worked, and my mother always did whatever the hell she wanted. And she did not cook or clean or none of it. My father did all that. The house was immaculate. My father was basically Felix Unger incarnate, and yes, and he could cook and clean and decorate, and he dressed so well. And it was like, what? No, he's not gay. He's just theatrical. And he had a lot of other friends who were also very theatrical. And it wasn't until adulthood it was like, oh, wait, yeah, Dad's totally gay, right? Yeah, totally. It's okay. So yeah, but we knew, yes, Dad, we knew they were different. We just didn't, I didn't know why.
Well, when were you aware that your father was gay? Tor Hudler Marvin Arngrim.
Tor Hudler Marvin Arngrimson.
So when did you realize that he was gay, and at what point and how did your parents explain it?
I guess I got into being like my late teens, early 20s, and it got really obvious. I mean, obviously the stories they could pass off as a kid was like, this is very theatrical. Yes, and all of his gay friends who were over all the time. Then it just got like more and more obvious. And finally, I was 20 or 21, and I finally went to my mom and went, seriously? Okay, we just got to like clear this up. I mean, he is gay, right? Because otherwise, this is really odd. I mean, am I hallucinating? Or is this person gay? And I was like, oh, yeah. And no, she totally knew. And that was the thing that was so crazy. It wasn't like usual stories you hear, people got married in the 50s, the wife didn't know. No, she knew that they made it, and this is the 50s when no one was doing it, they made a deal. They actually kind of got married and left Vancouver because between the two of them, they'd slept with everyone there, and they kind of got out of town. They're gonna like be chased out of Vancouver if they didn't go soon. So they got married, and the deal was she didn't have to cook or clean or do any of this wifey stuff, and she could totally like continue to write and act and travel and do whatever she wanted. And my father didn't have to change what he was doing, and she totally knew that he was bisexual and had slept with like most of her friends. And he totally knew that she came from the rich family. He was the farm boy. Okay, so he was an orphan named Wilfred James Bannon who gets adopted by farmers on the prairie. Basically, he's Albert Ingalls from this guy. He could not stand to watch Little House on the Prairie. He'd watch Little House on the Prairie and say, I did this. I'm like, I was there. I don't need to watch this. Oh, orphans. Now they're bringing in orphans. No. It's too much. But yeah, he was an orphan raised on the prairie, big farm family, so it was totally Little House on the Prairie. And so he left home at like 15 and became an actor and producer, whereas my mother was the very, very wealthy Vancouver family and went to the fancy private school. So had she married one of the people her parents wanted her to, as she said, she would have worn a lot of little white gloves and cut ribbons on things and gone to a lot of high teas and been bored out of her freaking skull. And she would have expected to be a proper Canadian Vancouver high society wife, and she was like, so she, when my father showed up, like, hi, crazy actor producer, we can go across Canada and be in TV and radio and films and become stars, and you won't have to cook or clean or do any of that bullshit, and I'll have a lot of cute gay guys hanging around the house. She was like, yeah! So she was completely happy with that. So no, they were totally, it was weird, because got married in the 50s, I was completely on the up and up. She totally knew he was gay, she knew he was sleeping with people, everybody knew everything. And I was like, what? And she's like, well, what am I going to tell you? It was like, in the 60s, you were like 5. I was going to tell you this? People didn't tell people these things. And so then it was easier. Once he was like out, I think our relationship really improved because it wasn't like elephant. I mean, oh my God, it was like a herd of elephants in the room. It was ridiculous. So, now that I was like, oh yeah, well,
pink elephants.
Big, great pink elephant with spangles. So, yeah, Liberace with the rhinestones. So yeah, it was like, oh, okay. Then everything was all on the up and up, and we could like hang out, and it was cool.
So your parents were friends with like Liberace and Christine Jorgensen, who was the first publicly known transsexual. How did your parents explain the operation between Uncle George becoming Auntie Christine?
Christine was awesome. We met Christine because I met her in California, so she was already Christine. Christine Jorgensen was born George Jorgensen, and she was very open about the whole thing because, well, at the time that Christine Jorgensen went to Denmark to have surgery to become Christine, it was all going to be, she wasn't a famous person, it was going to be a totally private thing to do. But somebody leaked the story, and she got back, and kablooey, it was what was it, something like New York GI becomes beautiful blonde, and it was like, hey, you know. So it turned into a thing. She's like, what do I do? So she wrote a book and got a nightclub act and a speaking tour, and went, I'd go with it. And her family was very supportive. I was reading her bio, and that's one of the reasons she was so well-adjusted. Her family was terribly supportive. And when she, as a young man, as George, realizing something was different, it was an aunt who sat down and said, there's a guy who, there's this doctor, there's these articles, people are, going and having surgery with this guy in Denmark, and I think I know someone who knows him, we can, hook you up. So her family was like, oh yeah, and then when her parents were a little freaked out when she got home, they called their Lutheran pastor, and he's like, well, do you love her? Do you love her? Yeah, we love her, okay. And that was it. They would, the press would call, and they'd be like, it's our daughter, leave us alone. So they totally backed her up. So she created a whole. She was with the late 50s, early 60s this happened, and then so by 68, she was out in California. She was touring, she was doing nightclub stuff. So she had a publicist, and so my dad was Liberace's manager and my manager, and so the same guy's managing Liberace's manager, Nellie Oleson, and the same publicist who's working for Christine Jorgensen was also working for my mother, Gumby. So Gumby's publicist is Christine Jorgensen. It was all very complicated. So Christine was friends with my parents. And she was like Auntie Christine, and she was so nice. And what I didn't know until just even a few years ago, I knew she was really cool with kids and I could talk to her, and she didn't talk down to me or I was stupid and talked to me like a normal person who was a little girl. Then I read her book. When she was recovering from surgery, there was no ward, there was no transgender post-op plate to exist. She was the only one in the hospital, and she had complications. They put her in the ward with terminally ill and chronically ill children. So she was on a ward with all these very sick children, and she befriended them all, would entertain them, and they would talk. And so she was very, very good with kids. So she was not going to hang out. I was like, yay! Christine's coming to dinner. Yay! Because I knew I get to talk to the cool adult. And then one day they said, well, Auntie Christine is very famous, and you might hear about her in the news, or someone might mention an article, so we should break this to you so you don't hear it in the street. But Auntie Christine used to be a man. That's the best way they could explain it. And I was like, no way. But then when they started explaining, they said, well, this is the thing people are doing. People are transitioning, they have surgery. And I was like, that's so cool. And of course, it's after I was 7, I thought, monkey, fire truck, giraffe, you could just become
like Scooby-Doo, you just unzip and step out.
Yeah, you could just become anything. But I still thought it was absolutely fabulous. I was saying, so if I came to some realization that I said, no, I'm really a guy, I can actually call someone, and I could think yeah. I'm like, that's amazing. So I didn't think it was bad. I thought that's great. Science is on the march. We got people on the moon. So I thought it was very cool, and Christine was just fabulous and flawless. But yes, when Christine then, of course, I was 8. He was going to the Liberace shows all the time. It was like Seymour Heller. Do you ever see the Behind the Candelabra, the TV movie?
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas. Dan Aykroyd plays the manager Seymour Heller. That was my dad's boss. When Dan Aykroyd walked on screen, I thought they'd done him up. I mean, he had the suit, he had those glasses, and when he sat down, he went, and I went, oh my God, he made the Seymour noise. Someone had to have told him about the Seymour noise. Because every time he said, so I was like, oh my God, it is Seymour. So that's my dad was vice president of Western Regional something at Seymour Heller. And Seymour would go to Vegas with Lee, and my dad was the LA guy. We rented a house in the Hollywood Hills around the corner from Liberace to be on call. And so it was about Halloween, I would go trick-or-treating at Liberace's house. And, because he had right?
Did you give out little sequins?
He got orange and black pumpkins with these beautiful jelly beans, and the butler with the tray, the door. It was awesome. And then they took me to a show, and that was the big thing. You gotta be on your best behavior. Don't say anything. No one must know that Liberace is gay. So I said, I'm 8. I know he's gay. And it was hysterical because he had these fancy things. They were in love with him, but they knew, and that's the whole thing. I talk about the book. They knew on some weird level that this person was not a heterosexual. that they weren't going to marry him. This was not yet, but they didn't call it that. He had his own, like his own. Of course, he's very sweet. You'd be safe with him. They knew. These women knew, but they didn't. If you said, "Is he a homosexual? Is he gay?" They would have been very upset. And he
Bachelor, wasn't that the
confirmed
bachelor,
a ladies' man. And they and you know that magazine, you sued the magazine for calling him gay, and they didn't even call him gay. A mint-flavored, ice-covered, quivering hunk of mother love. Or something. It was like, the hell does that mean? But apparently in 1957 in England, that means you're gay. And he sued the shit out of them, and he won.
Good.
He won. He was declared heterosexual in a court of law. The O.J. Simpson of the closet.
Well, after he died, they sued to get the money back.
Right? Did they?
And they won.
Oh shit! Did they? Oh no!
I mean, they're like.
Well, yeah, I guess.
I mean,
well, because
at the
time, at the court case, you know, they couldn't. It was like trying to find someone to get him and go, yeah, I totally slept with him, and like they couldn't get anybody. It was terrible. What are you gonna do? But I love it. It was that ice-covered, mint-flavored. I'm like, what?
So with all of your parents' eccentric friends, and with all their personalities, which one of them was probably the most influential for you?
Wow, it's weird because depending what kind of like day it is, I'm like totally like my dad, and I'm like totally like my mother. I cook like my dad.
Well, I meant which one of their friends did you get influenced by?
I'm so much like my great. Oh yeah, well, let's see. Well, B. Lily a lot, yeah. Because she was my friend. So I told my parents I could let her. They were allowed to play with her when I wasn't. Liberace was definitely influenced. Great showmanship. I mean, that was the guy who was dedicated, really knew what he was doing. He was a great influence. Their various wacky friends. Yeah, a lot of the Canadian sort of kind of crazy British ladies. Very cool. There were so many people, and everybody was a writer or an actor or painter or did some weird damn thing. So yeah, I didn't know of people not doing something creative, and that's why I always encourage people, even if, say you have a job that isn't considered in the arts, it's not your day job, it's not creative, do something as well. You know, take a class, take up pottery, whatever, learn to play the flute, do some other thing as well. Everyone should be writing or acting or painting or doing something. It seems to just be a human thing, but I didn't know anyone who wasn't a painter or a poet or a writer or a singer or an dancer or some damn thing.
The Little House Years.
Yes.
Friday, May 17th, 1974. It was your fourth time auditioning. First you auditioned for Laura, then Mary. How did Nellie come into your possession?
Well, yeah, because it was so great, because initially they did like the go-see, as they used to call it 100 million years ago in show business. You'd go in, and I went in, they said, we're making a show about these books. I had the books on the table, little set, and I'm like, I've never read the books. So what do I do? So I figured I didn't get it, and then they called me, I read for Laura, and I read for Mary, which would have been really wrong. I'm so glad I did. And having not read the books, I had no clue, so I didn't know there was a Nellie Oleson. I had no idea. So I get there, and I get the pages, and I start reading it, and that's when I turned to my father and said, this is not normal. This girl's a total bitch. And he said, what are you talking about? And I started reading it for him, because it was that first episode. It was the first episode with the Country Girls, with the My Home thing. Country Girl. And I don't think the Country Girls have a penny. What do you think? Well, I'm like, yeah. And the My Home speech, my home is the best home in all of Wollongong, that whole thing. So I'm going, this is hysterical, but who writes this? What is this girl's 12? This is not normal. So I started reading for my dad, and that's when he said, don't change anything. Don't touch it. Don't do anything. Just put the pages down. You're going to do it like that. So I go in, and it's Michael Lennon and Ken McRae, and the original producers, and Friendly. And I read the thing, and they're in hysterics. They're like dying. There's the tears rolling down their face. And they said, could you read, do it again, please? And I said, yes. What would you like me to change? And they said, nothing, just read that thing about the house. And they wanted to see like it was a fluke, because I was really little. I mean, I was 11, 12, and looked, well, you've seen that episode. I look like I'm 8. I'm like this big. I'm the little tiniest 12-year-old ever. I look like I'm a little tiny girl, and here I was getting the jokes in this stuff. And so they wanted to see if it was an accident. Like I really could just, and I did it again. They were, and as I said, wardrobe fitting is Tuesday. Yeah, by the time we got home and the agent was on the phone, I was hired immediately on the spot.
The character of Nellie Oleson is based on 3 different girls that
Yes.
tormented the real Laura Ingalls.
Took 3 people to beat me. Yes.
Nellie Owens, Genevieve Masters, and Stella Gilbert.
No relation.
No relation.
Stella Gilbert, no relation.
So, do you know whatever happened to these girls, and have any of their descendants ever approached you?
Nellie Owens, yes, I spoke to Bruce Owens, who's her great-grandson, and he was in Texas at the time. But yes, the Owens descendants have gotten kind of like out there. They were on a couple of websites, and now they're like, hi, yeah, it's us. And they're chatting people.
And she's the one.
The Currys, they are.
That's where Nellie moved out. Nellie Oleson
Nellie-
moved out to Oregon.
They did,
Tillamook.
because the Owens moved to California, and they moved up to Oregon, and Tillamook, big and cheese, I don't know.
Big and cheese, yeah.
And it was with William and Margaret were Nelson Harriet, the Owens. And so if you go to the Forest Grove, lovely Forest Grove Cemetery just outside Portland, you will find the grave of Nellie Owens Curry and her dad, William Owens, and her brother, Willie Owens. But I don't know, the mother died earlier or something like that. But she married a guy named Henry Curry and had a bunch of kids, had 3 kids, and they all had kids. And so that, whereas the Laura Ingalls line is like, thud. Laura had Rose. That was it. Rose had 1 baby who died. Laura had a baby who died. She had Rose. Rose had dead. Rose got divorced. That was it. And she like left the estate to a friend of hers. So there's no descendants of Laura Ingalls. Anyone who says I'm an Ingalls, they're like Charles's 3rd cousin or something, or they're a Quinn or they're Carolyn's. But and Mary didn't get married. And I don't think.
I mean, there was no Adam? No blind Adam?
No hot blind guy! Mary never got married. Carrie, I don't think had kids. It's like
Did she ever learn to speak?
And Carrie could talk. Carrie could talk. So there are no direct line Ingalls. There's no direct Laura Ingalls. But there's a ton of Nellie. There's all the Curry family, huge Curry family.
So what did the Currys say to you?
Lovely people. I got hold of him. I found him. We got on the phone. And I said, so, does anybody know about, like, your great-great-grandma? Was it like this? He said, well, we were dying to know. We didn't know for years that was Curry, because we didn't realize that, oh my God, that Nellie Owens' great-grandma, that was that Nellie. And then we all found out, we're like, what? And he said, because there's a lot of, when I was in Walnut Grove, the real Walnut Grove, they had a whole thing saying, oh no, Nellie wasn't me. And they had a letter from this woman who knew Laura saying, no, Laura was just blaming stuff on Nellie. It was not that bad. But he said that when Grandma Nellie was alive, she was shown an episode of the show, and a relative asked her, what do you think? And she said, very accurate. So people who knew her said, yes, that was her. She was awful. She was a hard woman because she was divorced at the time Nellie got divorced. And, and growing up in the 1800s, all these women who grew up in the 1800s are hard broads. I mean, you didn't survive. I mean, Karen Grassley, who played Moss, talked about they had the wind sickness, the howling winds on the prairie, and if your kid wandered off more than 10 feet, like wolves, Indians, the grass, they're just gone. And it was a horrible time. People died, and there was no cure for any diseases. So your family was constantly dropping dead of things. Your children were dying or getting eaten by wild animals. Your husband would go off to go work somewhere, go get money, and he'd be gone for like 5 months and be out. It was awful. And people had nervous breakdowns, and if you weren't they stayed in the city. They did not come across. The people who came across in those covered wagons either died on the way, had a nervous breakdown, went home, or survived. And if they survived, they were badass hard women. Badass. So you'll hear these stories about the Nellies and even Laura, women who grew up at that time, like, well, she wasn't really very nice. It's like, yeah, no kidding. But Genevieve, I heard that Genevieve was really the bitch. I'm trying to get confirmation on it, but apparently it was Genevieve or Stella was really, 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 really bitchy, but her dad was in publishing, and since here Laura's trying to get a career going with these books, she was like, yeah, not going to name her. Dad's in publishing, I might get running upset. So she hung it all on Nellie.
So it was your Aunt Marion, your mother's sister,
Yes.
who was appointed your set guardian.
Indeed.
How would you describe her?
Oh, a saint. Auntie Marion was like one of the greatest human beings that ever lived. What happened, my mom's older sister was retired, and she was widowed. Uncle Beach had died. And Uncle Beach was a concert violinist who worked with Yasha Heifetz, and Auntie Marion was a concert soprano. So like, again, this is everybody is doing this. And Auntie Marion was really cool. And she didn't have much to do that week, and she adored me, her favorite niece, and all. And so my parents said, look, she has to have a set guardian, but we're both working. We're not going to be there 24 hours. My mother said, I'm not hanging out all day sitting on my ass on a set. Not a stage mother. It's like, hang out with a little stage mother. Ugh. So they all had we got better stuff to do. We had gigs. So somebody had to go and sit with me for 9 hours a day on the set. And Annie Mary was happy to do it, and they were like, well, you should give her some money, so I suppose like every few weeks, like pay her, and she would like save up the money. We'd go on location, they'd give her per diem, for meals, and she'd save it up at the end of the week, take me shopping. So yeah, so she loved it. A, she liked hanging out with me. B, it was something to do, and she liked talking to people. Oh, did she like talking? I want to talk. She would talk and talk and talk, but she also would get people's life stories out of it, which was funny, because most people like my Annie Mary and said, oh, she went talk. But you'd leave her alone with someone, and she'd come back and, oh, yes, he's very interesting. Did you know? We'd go, how did you get all? You were there for 5 minutes to get their entire life story. And she liked Michael Landon. She thought Michael Landon was really cute. And so she'd come to work and hey, good morning, babe. So she had a blast. So she became a fixture on the set. Even when I turned 18, I went, oh, you don't have to come anymore. And I showed up. Everybody at work said, where's Annie Mary? And I had to just go get her. And that was it. She continued to come to the set with me long after I was 18 because everyone said, well, you can't come here. No, go get your aunt. So she was still there a couple of times a week, even long after I was an adult.
When did you embrace being a bitch?
Oh, early on. I mean, as soon as I started doing it, I was getting this reaction, even before it aired, and people went nuts. But even when I was doing it, it felt so good, and we would do these scenes, and right away, I mean, the chemistry with me and Melissa Gilbert and the other actors, the crew, they'd be like, whoa, I was clearly doing something right. And the episode sort of escalated. It's like they'd write an episode, and then I would go further with it, and then Michael write an episode taking it further, let's see how far she'll go, take it further, and then I take it further, till eventually I'm pretending to be paralyzed and getting pushed down a hill in a wheelchair. It just kind of went nuts. And so it got nuttier and nuttier, and I would go further. I would sit up and read the lines and go, which line reading of this makes me most want to punch myself in the face? And it's like, I don't think the country girls have a penny. Oh, not quite. I don't think the country girls have a penny. Oh, that's the one. Yeah. But when I would read the lines and wince, and go, oh, that's horrible. Yeah, that's the one. Okay. And so I was going for what it was the most annoying fingernails on a blackboard. Oh my God, how much do you hate this girl performance as I could possibly get to me. I wanted people watching the show to go, ugh! And apparently I did. Because then the thing started running, and people coming and go, I cannot believe, I hate you. And people were afraid of me. And I was 16 and in the Christmas parade on Hollywood Boulevard, Santa Claus Lane, Hollywood Christmas parade. And I'm in the Carnegie, and people were doing the booing thing, and I was doing the yeah. And someone threw a McDonald's cup of orange soda at my head, right in the face. And what was that movie, The Weatherman, where he's getting hit in the face with a milkshake? So yes, like that. Splat! And as I said, at least it wasn't a beer bottle, because I'd be dead now. And but then it was $1.75 a soda, so I was doing something right. And
that's a good
clearly.
way to look at it.
And that's the thing. I talk about in the book about the two little girls kicking me, knocking me down, and people were like attacked. But when they did, I would be shocked at first when people would call me bitch or knock me to the ground or throw soda at my head and be like, oh, what's happening? But then I'd go, whoa, what did I do? Okay, I was acting, because it's not me. It was me. I didn't know these people. I didn't do anything. They were watching the show. I somehow, some inflection in the way I said something, the way I looked at Laura, I did something in my acting, something in that show that made people so incredibly angry that even months after this episode, they run into me in a completely different place and go, ah! And feel the need to hit me and throw things. How good do you have to be to do that? That's, well, like we talked about, making the joke about Joffrey, King Joffrey, from the, he's not going to act anymore. He's going to do theater. He's got the kid who's Irish. He's going to go back to theater like academia, but he's not going to do any more TV movies. Because he said, well, I wasn't really into the idea of doing TV, but it was a good part. But everybody's crazy, and if this is how I'm going to be treated, I'm not doing it, because people coming up like, I hate you, and yelling at him. He's like, I don't need this. And he's just a darling person. But it's the same thing. He's an actor, and he went, well, how horrible can I be? And apparently he's really good. So everyone hates him now. And he's like, yeah, I'm not doing that again. So I consider him my spiritual son. I want to adopt him. He's awesome. So, yeah.
Well, that brings up a good segue. Is in the book you mentioned several reactions that people have to you out of the blue.
Yes.
So in your lifetime at this point, What is the most bizarre reaction that someone has come up to you because of your role?
Wow, I mean, that's a doozy. Okay.
And you've had a lot.
The orange soda hit me in the side of the head, the two little girls kicking me in the butt. Never go out in costume.
Bunch of girls in the mall chasing you out with pitchforks.
Yeah, right, yeah. People freaking out just generally. I was in front of my popcorn movie theater. Oh, it's really hard to get food in restaurants. This is a running thing. You'd think I might get on TV, might get better service. No, because people, they freak out. They're like, oh my God, it's you. And then they take my order and it goes, whoosh. They just didn't. They're like, the turkey sandwich, and they go away. And then they come back and bring everybody else's food but mine. And like, what just happened? They went, oh, ha. They like totally forgot. And then they go away and they come back and the order's completely wrong. It's like, well, no, I asked. And I'm like trying to not be mean. And like, turkey sandwich. Oh, I'm so sorry. This goes on for like days until I eventually get my food. And then I can't like not tip them because then it's like, oh, the bitch didn't tip. You know, call the inquirer. So it's And so I have had difficulty sometimes getting food because people like wig out. People brought me weird things. There's the woman who made little yarn worms with little googly eyes and made one for every character on the show. One has a little hat, that's my little Annie. Little glove ringlets, oh, this one must be me, okay. Yeah. And she gave everybody in the show, we all got a little box set of these weird yarn spiral worms with googly eyes that were us. That I have mine somewhere. There was a drag queen, well, a lot of drag queens have dressed up as me.
There's a shocker.
Yeah, there's a drag queen in Ohio, I think, called Nellie Oleson. There's 4 different bands in Europe called either the Nellie Olesons, Nellie Oleson, but the Nellie Olesons are a fabulous French rock group, and they have a song called The Family Eagles. I love it. I got to meet them, and I got all their t-shirts and hats and albums. They're awesome. I love the Nellie Olesons band. There was a drag queen in Vegas who dressed up as me and then brought me a Barbie that she'd completely redone as like a Nellie drag Barbie. So I have very peculiar gifts and things. You have the lovely paintings of different paintings of the mercantile in like watercolor and charcoal. But yes, it's been very odd. Well, just the other day, weren't we at the autograph thing at the airport? A woman came up and said, you were my role model. I actually was the bully at school. I was kind of terrible, and you were my hero. So apparently she's nicer now. But she was horrible when she was like 12, 13 years old. She was like a mean girl, and she thought I was her role model. I was great. So that's weird. You get those sometimes, yeah.
I'm going to mention a couple of your co-workers.
Yes.
Summarize them in a sentence.
Oh, Jesus, okay.
Michael Landon.
Oh.
Give me the easy one first.
Yeah, hardest working man in show business. He never slept. I find he was a huge influence. I mean, anytime I wear like those sunglasses, you have to say here, sunglasses. We still refer to those as Michael Landon glasses. So all those just Michael Landon glasses. And get mad, and his lips would disappear, his nostrils would flare. In one sense, one man, one-stop shopping. He did everything. One-stop shopping, hardest working man in show business.
Charlotte Stewart, Miss Beadle.
Everyone's favorite teacher and ours too. Beautiful, beautiful. And she has a book out. You have to get her book. Her book is A Little House in the Hollywood Hills, A Bad Girl's Guide to Being Mary X, Miss Beadle, and Me.
She was hanging out with Jim Morrison.
Yeah, she was in Eraserhead. Well, if you ever saw Eraserhead, she's Mary X. She's the babe. She has a monster baby in Eraserhead, and she was in Tremors with Kevin Bacon. She was in Twin Peaks, and she had sex with Jim Morrison. And apparently everyone in Hollywood, it's like the best book. It's like Miss Beadle. Oh my God! Yeah, she turned down Michael Landon and Don Knotts.
Because they're so similar.
That's the only two people.
Karen Grazel.
Yeah, she's like Ma, but like almost overly sensitive. She is. She's very, very Ma, and she kind of like became, over the years, has gotten more Ma-like and thinks of us as all her children. And but I remember she was sort of emotionally fragile during the show. She's tougher now. But I remember I would sometimes feel bad for her because I think she thought she was thinking like everything's her fault. Like, somebody would be sick, would be quiet. It was like, oh, you're mad at me. I've done something terrible to you. It was like, no, that wasn't it. No. Very, very sweet, but she took on, she would feel bad about the things that she hadn't done. Like, no, it's okay. Now she's cool now. She's much more relaxed.
Jonathan Gilbert.
Jonathan Gilbert, the true Willie. That boy's crazy. He was crazy then. He was crazy. He was blowing stuff up in his backyard. We don't know where he is right now. Okay, we were kind of, for years, sort of kept testing. He would pop up. He was like, I'm in South America. Okay, I'm in Africa. Okay, I'm back in LA. Like every year and a half, he'd like pop up. He never wanted to be in show business. He was along for the ride. He came to the audition because he's Melissa Gilbert's brother. And he came to the audition with her, and they're like, oh, you could be Willie. What? Okay. So he had no intention of doing any of this. This is like, oh, and then it's a hit, and he's there for like ever. This was not his plan. So when the show ended, he grew up. He was like, bye. Packed his stuff, got out of his mother's house, and just went whoosh and puff of smoke. He's done it. He did do commodities trading. A lot of people think he's a stockbroker. He briefly did commodities trading. He's not doing that now, but he did do that because he's very smart. He's crazy. He's gone all over the world. When my book came out, I did write to him, and he wrote me back, so I knew he was alive and doing stuff, and I think he was heading back to California. But he's very eccentric, and he never read the scripts, ever. And he started the show, he was really little, and he didn't know how to read, so his mom would just teach him his lines. But then he was well old enough to read, and he still would not read the episodes, just his lines. And I finally said, Jonathan, why don't you read the scripts? And he said, because I want to be surprised when I see it on TV. And he actually was. I was over at their house watching it, and he was like, wait, oh, look at this part. But that's why it worked. It worked for his character, because how many times have you seen Willie's in a scene and somebody walks in the room and he's like, wow, what are you doing? And the funeral scene, it's raining, got the rain machine going, the Reverend Alden's praying, we're all by the graveside with their umbrellas and our dark suits, and he's being so good. He's in this little suit. This goes on for like 2-3 takes, and he finally turns to me and goes, "Who died?" I'm mad as a hat at that kid.
Richard Bull.
Richard Bull. We even said if you were going to vote who's most like their character of anyone on the show, absolutely Richard Bull. Yes, my paw. He was awesome because he was the voice of reason. The voice of reason on the show, absolutely. If there was any kind of chaos or anything, we're going, now, let's think seriously about this. He was so Mr. Olson. He was so smart and so sensible and so cool. And in his later years, and I know my husband was just laughing, because we went to dinner with him, when he was very old and he was at the motion picture home, and he insisted on paying. And we were like, oh, no, we'll get it. And my husband's never forgotten. He said, I had Mr. Olson shook his fist at me. Don't look at that check. I'll get that check. Oh, that's Paul. Mr. Olson shook his fist at him and said, I'll be paying for that young man. So yeah, screw with him. No.
Catherine McGregor.
That's the craziest person. She's still alive. Craziest person ever walked in. Still alive. 90. I can't even. She's at the motion picture home. She's had good days and bad days because she's like nearly 100 years old. But she's still like pretty much there, and she's still healthy. There's nothing wrong. She didn't have cancer. There's nothing wrong with her. She's gonna keep going. She's gonna bury us all. She didn't want to go to the motion picture home. Bunch of actors talking shop, and she was always very independent. She had a condominium. She drove until her late 80s, and finally the doc said, no, you really should go for your health. It'd be better if you were in a place. And we go, oh, all right. So she finally, under protest, most of the beautiful luxurious motion picture home. Meanwhile, Richard Bull, now he and his wife had said, oh, we're going to go to the motion picture home. They had a reservation like years in advance. So they finally sell the condo in Chicago, and all of a sudden they come rolling in and they get the cottage. So they wind up all moving in the same week. So imagine you're in your 80s and you're in the cafeteria at the motion picture home, perhaps you're on vacation, and there's Nels and Harriet arguing in line. People are just like, what am I seeing? So yeah, they were, and it was great because they were in the same place, and his real wife, so when he died, his TV wife and his real wife could commiserate and everything. But yeah, Catherine, force of nature, Hurricane Catherine, yeah, she wanted to direct people and tell people how to act, and she could drive you nuts. She could just drive you crazy, like Mrs. Olson. But unlike Mrs. Olson, she was a real like shirt off her back kind of person. She took in stray people and animals, and she really was a very kind, loving person. Just batshit. Just what are you gonna do? So.
Steve Tracy.
Steve Tracy was my best friend for many years. When you get married on TV, it's like an arranged marriage. You don't know who you're going to get. You can get somebody horrible. You can get somebody you don't get along with. And generally, I would say from my 50 years in show business, TV couples, people who play TV couples, either absolutely adore each other, like Bob Newhart, Suzanne Pleshette, they either absolutely love each other or they cannot stand each other. It's like one or the other. It's like no middle ground. And I was told that they were going character that was funny, you know, funny, short, Jewish guy, blah, blah. So when they say character, that, you know, in Hollywood means the ugly guy. So Melissa and I are sitting there waiting, you know, I knew she's going to get a cute guy to play Alonzo, and of course Mary got, you know, Little Boomer, stunning. So we're like, what am I going to get? And so we're like, you know, they could have gone really, but luckily it was Steve Tracy, the cute, adorable, curly-haired boy, and he was so sweet and so smart, and we had immediate chemistry, and he was so good, and even in interviews he talked about our chemistry, and I thought, like, I'm 17, he's been acting for how long, and he's talking about how I have great timing and we have good chemistry. He doesn't have to do that. So he was a very, as I say, generous as an actor, and for wonderful, wonderful person, very brave, because he died in 1986 of AIDS. This is, you know, before really any of the drugs were starting. He was doing experimental drug. It was one of the, like, interferon trials, like D or Z or whatever, back then in the 80s. And it was intramuscular injections, and it was painful. And I said, doesn't that hurt? He said, oh, yeah, it hurts like hell. And I said, what? And he said, well, some of the people dropped out of the trial because it was too physically painful. I said, but you're still doing it. Oh, yeah, I have a very high pain tolerance. I just, you know, and I said, well, do you think it's going to work? He said, oh, no, it's too late to save me. I said, what? He goes, oh, no, this is probably good. He says, I'm letting them do it because they might find a cure after I'm gone. So he was enduring these extremely pain, like injecting crap in his bone because he might save other people down. Okay, that's the kind of person Steve Tracy was.
No, when he first appeared on the set, he was very closeted. Nobody knew.
Well, in the 1970s, it was like everybody was in a closet. It was
what made you confirm, and how was it confirmed?
Oh my God. So he shows up, and Melissa Gilbert and I are just like interrogating him, because we're like, every guy comes in and says, are you him, are you him? And oh, it's him. So we're like, okay, who's your favorite band? Do you like pizza? What toppings do you like? Okay, don't say pineapple, yeah. You know, we're just kind of grilling him about everything. And he's like answering correctly. He seems okay. And then we're out in Simi on the first day, and Melissa comes up and goes, your husband has pierced ears. I said, a lot of people have a pierced ears. She said, no, both ears are pierced. Now, this was before, everybody has pierced noses and everything now. This was 79. People didn't run around, guys weren't running around pierced ears. And people did not have a lot of piercings. If you had pierced ears, you were a woman, or you were a gypsy, or a sailor, or you did a lot of drag. So she's going, dude's got pierced ears. Something's up. And I was like, that is an interesting point. So we corralled him and said, what's the deal with the pierced ears? And he said, oh, I was a big hippie, because he was only, he's at Kent State, he was a big hippie in the 70s. And Melissa's like, yeah, they grow back. So we're like, okay, he's got pierced ears. Clearly, at some point, this guy's going around wearing 2 earrings, so something's up. And then he didn't have a girlfriend, and in interviews, he was confirmed bachelor. That was starting to come out in stories, and he wasn't 30 yet, so he was getting away. Oh, and he got a big house in Laurel Canyon with money, and with a bunch of roommates, a bunch of guys. Boys, sure in a house in Laurel Canyon. Yeah, sure you are. 3 really good-looking guys, sure in a house. So it was getting kind of obvious, and then finally what happened was the episode premiered, our wedding was the big episode. And he threw a party. And he threw a party for his friends. I was not invited because he wasn't inviting anyone from the show, because it was the 70s and everyone was pretending, the damnedest people pretending to be straight. So he had not told anyone he was gay, and his agent manager like, don't tell him he's gay. So he just invited all his gay friends. But somebody knew somebody who knew somebody, and next thing you know, he's having a party, right? And it gets back to, it's like, let's crash the party. So we wound up all a bunch of us crashed the party. And when he opened the door and there I was, at first he went, then he went, figured like, okay, what the better, come on in, we'll just like settle it now. And then there's like, 800 gay guys going, Steve! Like, yeah, okay, well this is pretty clear. So that's just clear that. I mean, yeah, there you go. So that was it. There was like no discussion after that. It's like, okay, he's out. But then it was so crazy. And like I said, people were in a lot of TV shows, like Lost in the Prairie, like all these teen idols who were gay and not out. So his management and my management and agents got together. The Inquirer was starting to get nosy. And I was still a teenage girl, but they wanted to know, like, why aren't I dating a bunch of cute boys? And I was dating, like, a weird, much older English guy who had no interest in being in the papers. So I wasn't telling anyone who I was dating either. I wasn't showing up with, like, a cute, teen idol on my arm. And he wasn't telling anyone he was dating. And people were getting a little suspicious. So suddenly on Valentine's Day, we did a huge feature with the National Enquirer, invited them over for lunch, and announced that we could no longer hide our love for each other. And that Steve Tracy and I had been having this torrid affair behind the scenes, our little house, and we're madly in love, and we bought each other It was funny, we went and got each other Valentine's Day cards, and we said, okay, you go to that part of the store, I'll go to this part of the store, don't peek. And we actually bought each other the same cards. So we were actually terribly mentally ill. We got on like shows that we wanted to get on one of those game shows they had the Hollywood couples on because we knew we would win, because we knew everything about it would be like that. But we got invited to all the best parties because now we were a couple. Oh yeah, they're there, the two of them. We got invited to everything. It was awesome. So yeah, so we like double dated. We took our boyfriends with us and dropped them off somewhere and picked them up later, and it was great.
He was the first person you knew with HIV?
Yep.
And he was the first person you knew who died of HIV?
Yes, I knew well. There was a period in the very late 70s, really, before 81 or anything, when some friends of my parents would simply disappeared. People would say, I gotta go home. And it was like, oh, Tony went home. What do you mean Tony went home? He hasn't spoken to his parents in years. What do you mean he went home? He hates Kansas. And people were like suddenly, oh yeah, Fred, he's selling everything in his apartment. Why is he selling everything in his apartment? We got like a bunch of people's TVs and microwaves. Why are people selling things and suddenly fleeing LA? And there were all these like gay guys in their 30s who were suddenly selling all their possessions and running home to their parents, and they couldn't. And then you wouldn't hear from them, and then like 3 years later you heard they were dead. And nobody had an explanation for this. And a friend of my mom's got really sick, and it had to be the 70s. And he was in the hospital, and nobody knew what was wrong with him. And I remember my dad said, oh, he's malingering, he's fine, he's such a hypochondriac. And then my mom went to visit him, and she came home, she was white as a sheet. My mother came home and said, he's dying. And my father said, well, what's he got? She goes, I don't know, and neither do the doctors. And she said, I don't know what he's got. She said, but he's not getting out of that hospital. I saw him, he's got something really wrong with him, and he is not leaving that hospital. He died, he was like 29 or something. And they couldn't, and they just went, what in the hell? And then when AIDS happened several years later, my parents said, oh my God, that's what that was. So people were dying in the 70s, and they went to 81, they said what it was. So it was, people were disappearing, but we didn't know what it was. And then, as it happened, I didn't have any close friends, and they were all still alive. And then Steve called me and said, public with his diagnosis, and told me he had AIDS. And I was devastated because my friend, I was very young. And I said he made a hell of a go, but he outlived doctors' predictions and did the experiment stuff. But absolutely. And I really hadn't had, my grandmother had died, but I was 23 when he died. How many people did I know who died? That generation, my generation, was the thing. We were too young to have lost our friends in Vietnam. And we were of an age where all diseases were curable. Nobody was going off to war and dying. So we didn't really have the thing of having people from your high school class or college class drop dead on you. And suddenly we did. And we're like, ah! I was devastated. Just devastated.
His illness and his death is what prompted you to go into the HIV hotlines. Mm-hmm. You were in 1986, you were one of the first celebrities to lend your name to an HIV hotline that wasn't gay. First celebrity that wasn't gay. That was even before Rock Hudson, wasn't it? Oh, yeah. No, Rock Hudson died in 85.
He was like right on that, and Rock Hudson, of course, saying, no, I don't know. And Liberace was on a watermelon diet. Joan Rivers in 1982 or 83? 82. Did a benefit for AIDS Project Los Angeles, which had just started, like in somebody's living room, and she, Nancy Cole and the gang were still meeting in a basement somewhere, and Joan Rivers did a benefit called Can We Talk, and Bob still has a couple of t-shirts, in 1980. So Joan was there before Liz Taylor, and then it was like me and like Morgan Fairchild. Morgan Fairchild was everywhere, and then there was Liz Taylor, and then eventually there was Madonna, and then everybody started showing up. Oh God, Leslie Ann Warren, Quinn Cummings was on the hotline. Quinn Cummings, she was a good hotliner too. But yeah, I was like, as I say, it was like me, Madonna, Joan Rivers, and Liz. That was like it. There's a bunch of broads in high heels here to save the world. It was like, oh yeah, God, male celebrities. I'm proud to say in the later 80s, do you remember the whole Lyndon LaRouche thing? There's that cuckoo guy. Okay, he couldn't vote because he was a convicted felon. In fact, he was in prison, and he ran for president from his prison cell. This is like how insane this person was. And he was always coming out with these crackpot things. And so he said, we'll quarantine everyone with AIDS. And he managed to get 2 bills on the ballot that were totally round up anyone who was HIV positive and lock them up and like on an island. It was nuts. But it was scary. It was a time when people could vote for it. So PSAs were done on the radio. One of the radio stations said, we want to help. We'll do the whole thing free and produce it. And The only two celebrities who did these PSAs were me and Burt Lancaster. Who knew? But Burt Lancaster got in there and said, yes, vote no on hatred, and vote no on ignorance, vote no, and I said I was in. So me and Burt Lancaster held the line against Lyndon LaRouche in the PSA department. It says it's a very strange time.
Now, it was at this time in '86 when you worked on the hotline that you met your husband Bob, who performs in the band Catahoula around town, so you could easily catch him there. And the rumor has it is that you found him working in a closet.
Yes. So I go to APLA and I sign up for like everything, and they're like, well, we got the hotline training. So I was class 32. If you meet anyone who's ever on the Southern California AIDS hotline, they all know their class number. Like 20 years later, 30 years later, you go, class 17, class 39, class 32. They was like, we all, it's like, everyone got very connected to it as their team, and they all recite their class number. So I was in class 32, and Bob was the director of the whole Southern California AIDS hotline for APLA. And you were the sixth person hired? APLA? Sixth person hired, first straight guy hired at APLA. It was like, nobody, it was like 1984, and he shows up and gets hired at Sparks, Los Angeles. But they gave him a renovated broom closet for an office so that they could all torment him by going, he's in the closet, and slam the door, and one light bulb hanging from the ceiling. So yeah, it was pretty nuts. But we became friends and hit it off. But he had a girlfriend, and I was getting married, and it was the weirdest thing. So I had the fiance, then husband, and the girlfriend, but we would go to all these events. We'd be on like panels at UCLA, and we were so together so often, people started to make jokes. And there was this one volunteer who used to say, oh, look, I see the ever lovely Mrs. Schoonover, it's here. And they were calling Mrs. Schoonover as a joke. Oh, Bob's here. Oh, yeah, Mrs. Schoonover. Yeah, she's everywhere. And then time goes on, and I get divorced, and he breaks up with a girlfriend, and we actually decide to go out. It's like, did you see When Harry Met Sally? It was completely like that. So we finally, after years of being friends, we go out on the date, and we did all that, and then we wind up getting married. And we were at a party, and we just got married, and at this party, and we ran into the volunteer. And he said, oh, look, it's Bob, and I see the ever-lovely Mrs. Schoonover is here. And we went, yes. He almost fell in the pool. It was backwards in the pool.
Now, working with HIV is not the only philanthropic work you've done. You've done a lot of stuff. But how did you get involved with the National Association to Protect Children?
Protect.org, and go to your website, protect.org, National Association to Protect Children. I've done a lot of stuff. Like, I was volunteering with the Special Olympics when I was like 12, and I was always doing something. Protect, they called me because I was an activist, and they knew what I was doing, and it was, well, we're finally going to do something, a lobbying group for children to fight child abuse, because every politician says, oh, I love the American family, until something actually happens that they have to vote on a bill that might cost money that would actually help children. Then it's like, ooh, because kids don't vote and they don't make campaign contributions. So when push comes to shove in Washington or in your state capital, children generally, it's like, whatever, great photo op. So a whole group of people, there was like lawyers and doctors, there was a guy who was the Attorney General of the state of Wisconsin. This whole gaggle of people went, what the hell do we do? They kept noticing that they kept hitting the wall with these loopholes. They would catch a predator, guy who molested a kid, they would get him, he would be found guilty, get him into court, get the kid to testify, get him in there, and actually find the guy guilty, and then he was out the jailhouse door in no time, and going home with his victim, and it's like, whoa, 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 what happened? Because in several states there's a thing called the incest exception. Yes, I said incest exception. Everybody kind of goes, no! It's a loophole in the law that whereas if molesting a child is 20 years, if it's your own child or like a niece or nephew, you can, if you're in a state that has this, apply to plead guilty under the incest exception and have your whole sentence waived. Also get deferred entry of judgment, which means you're not actually convicted of anything. They clean your record, expunge your record. So you're not a registered sex offender, and you don't have a record. So technically you could, and multiple victims is included, and all sorts of egregious abuse. So a guy could rape all 4 of his nieces, say, and open a daycare center the next year because he pled it. Yeah, this was happening, and thousands of people were going free, and it was really insane. And in some states, he'd be remanded to therapy, but the victim had to attend by law, even if she didn't feel like it. So all these little girls were telling, no, you have to go to court-ordered therapy with the guy who sexually abused you. And in fact, we had one girl testify, well, she's a grown woman now, talk about being told she had to go to therapy with her stepfather, or they would send her to juvenile hall. And she's like, he's not in jail, but I'm going to go, oh, yeah. So it was that bad. So they said, this is what we're doing. We're going to do this. We're going to do a bunch of things. And I said, yeah, I can get into that. And they said, we just want you like on the board. You don't have to come public about the fact that I was sexually abused as a kid. They're like, you don't have to do that. But then we were fighting a law in Sacramento, and it got kind of big. And I'm like, people are going to ask me. I spent all that time with people during the AIDS crisis where people said, well, if you're a celebrity and you're doing this, are you gay? Do you have AIDS? And that was, you had to answer. Or people, you said, no comment. Okay, that's a yes. So if I'm doing this, they're going to go, well, were you sexually abused? And I'm not going to go hamana, 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 so it's going to be yes. So we went to do this in this, I was outed by a senator, it was Senator Batten, who actually on the Senate floor said, and Alison Arngrim, who was also a victim of abuse, will be testifying. And so there you go, out of the bag. And then what happened is a group of senators in the Public Safety Committee said no, they wanted to keep the incest exception on the books. And everyone was kind of aghast. So luckily, Harlan, my publicist, had me go on Larry King on CNN, Larry King Live. And of course, they were like, oh my God, we have this girl from Little House on the Prairie, and she was sexually abused, and talk openly about being abused. But in exchange, was allowed to talk about the law. And I was on Larry King for a frickin' hour and talked about the law and how it came to be and why it was on the books. And Larry King started going, oh, protect www.protect.org. And they all went to our website, and we had a backup server, and then they all went to Sacramento, because when they got to our website, there were the pictures of the senators who voted no, and all of their like phone numbers and fax numbers and their email. And we crashed the server in Sacramento, and like their whole phone system like melted down. And we were very happy about that. And we wound up back in and we wound up winning. We eventually, it took us like 2 years, it was ridiculous. But I wound up going public. And I did it because we needed to pass a law. And we've since killed that law in like 7 states. And we're doing a bunch of other stuff now. We're doing a thing training veterans, people who've come back from Afghanistan or Iraq are wounded, and they take these soldiers called the Hero Corps, and they can't go back to their regular jobs, but we have a training program they can sign up for, and then we train them on all this forensics and computer stuff and give them to the ICAC teams, which are the police teams, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, who track child pornographers and child traffickers. And so this gives them more manpower on the computers and rescue people, and this increases the number of arrests and investigations. And we also, these ICAC teams are usually funded by their states, so I was just in Sacramento making sure they didn't cut the funding to our LA ICAC, which is really huge. And we've really helped ICAC and all these people cause more child rescues as we go. Usually when they find someone who's making child porn, there's children in the house, it's their own kids. So they're pulling the kids out of the house. And we have a thing called the Weiss Center for Child Rescue Technology, where we create tech to help law enforcement better track these rather high-tech schemes that's going on out there. We're doing something with dogs too, therapy dogs, and dogs that can find out that you hid your computer under the couch with your child porn on it. Things like that, very clever stuff. But yeah, and bunch of stuff. We call them sunshine laws, finding out like if they won't tell you, you can find out on a website now, and we're going to make this nationwide, like if the prosecutors in your area have been allowing child predators, child molesters to walk, how many of them they have said found guilty but were not sentenced to any time or given like 6 months. Because now it's like you occasionally be a case of like a rapist who's given 6 months and it makes the news. But all that's public record, but usually you can't find out about it. There's not a place you can go and find out that, say, your local prosecutor has never actually sent anyone to jail. We're going to make that possible so you can find that out.
Definitely on that.
We do that.
First question, and
Yes.
feel free to say pass, and it's dropped. Your personal abuse that you just mentioned.
Yep.
When did your parents realize what was going on, and what was their reaction?
Oh, they didn't. I had to tell them. They were clueless. You know, back in the 60s, they didn't have PSAs on the TV talking about child abuse. There was no, what was in the 70s, they passed, I know way too much about this, the CAPTA Act, which was the whole thing that made mandated reporters and the whole child abuse laws. Up until then, it was all very hit and miss, and there were no TV movies, and there was no after-school specials, no brochures. People just didn't talk about it for a long time. So it was really the 70s, and then you had things like Something About Amelia in the 80s, and people started talking about this. So in the 60s, when my parents decided that amongst many completely lunatic babysitters they left me with, that my severely disturbed, drug-addicted older brother might be a good ticket to leave me with, like, yeah, no, not a good idea. So I wound up getting pretty badly abused for a long time, and I didn't tell anyone, because most people don't tell anyone. And you get told not to tell anyone. So I didn't. And it was not fun, and it was weird. You know, I was always like feeling like maybe someone can look at me and they can tell. So it was like a weird closet to be in. Like, don't tell anyone, and oh my God, they're gonna find out. And then, which is why Nellie Oleson was great, I could vent all my hostilities and rage. It's lovely. I was in my 20s when I started going to therapy, and I told my parents I was going to, and they were just like, well, my mother's first words were, oh shit. I mean, literally. She was surprised. She was an actress, but not that good an actress. She really didn't know. She was like, so they were properly stunned. They did believe me. I have a lot of friends. They went to their parents. They didn't believe them. They were properly embarrassed. They did do the thing that a lot of families do when the molester plays the victim, and it's like, oh, well, he's very sick, and they kind of all like, oh, poor baby. I'm like, hello. But they do that. So they did do that, but they didn't think I was making it up, and they didn't think that it was okay. So I give them that. And they did act properly contrite, or as my father said, you know, there's negligence and there's gross negligence, and I'm sorry, but what we did qualifies as gross negligence. That's not supposed to happen. I don't know what to tell you. We fucked up. So, okay, I'll take that. So it went better than it could have. Yeah, I probably would have liked it better if they'd said, oh, wait, this person abused you, and yes, he's our son, but Jesus, and like, you know, I don't know, punched him out, something. But they did kind of do the old poor baby, he couldn't help himself, and kind of did cater to him, which was really weird. But then everyone, I mean, that is textbook standard operating procedure.
How many laws have you helped to get changed in Child Protective Services?
Incest exception in California, I went to Albany, changed the incest exception in New York. Almost got a judge kicked out in Kansas. We didn't get him kicked out, but then like he was running for election, we almost got him off the bench, and then he just decided not to run the next year. So yeah, he was awful. And there was a guy running for some position in Virginia. We did not get him in, but we scared the shit out of his opponent so badly that when his opponent, who was kind of a jerk, won, he called then Protect and said, okay, what do you guys want? Because I'm not going through that again. And you pulled this guy out of nowhere and ran against me, and I almost freaking lost. So what would you like passed? What do I sign? What do I agree to? What child molestation laws do I make happen to make you fuckers go away? And so he became quite handy. We're like, great, okay, well, here's a menu. So then that worked out. And then the ICAC, I got to say that last year I went up California, Sacramento, capital of California, because the ICAC team was getting $1 million a year to run their program, and they had reduced the budget to $0, and we didn't know why. And we went up, and the committee didn't know why. We don't know. Some staffer in the basement, like, $0. Some like Jared from Subway who works up there crossing things out. We don't, because the senators, when we went to the committee, went, well, why is this cut? Do you know why it was cut? And I was like, I was going to ask you. And they're like, we have no idea why this is cut. What is going on? And then we had two people from ICAC explaining what they did, and they were like, yeah, put it back. So they put back the $1 million. We went back again, and they were like, you people again, and Nellie Oleson as well. What are you doing here? And we said, well, it was cut. And they were like, it was cut again. They were just like, so they weren't giving us the business like the other people. They were like, what? Why are you even having to come up here? And so then there's a guy, Assemblyman Jim Cooper. Look him up. He's a great guy. You like him. You should help him out. Assemblyman Jim Cooper he said, well, you know, since they had to come up here a second time, I was really thinking maybe it should be $5 million instead of $1 million. And you know, there was somebody coming in for another program right before us, and they were asking for like $20 million, and I think they were getting it. We were like, so they did. They upped it to $5 million. And then there was something about penalties for child porn. I did that one. Yeah, that one worked. And I don't know, 7 or 8, 9.
Just so casually, 7 or 8 laws.
A handful. I don't know.
Now, there's no justification for any kind of abuse, but would you have still gotten into the Child Protective Services if you were not in the situation? Very likely, because the thing is when you look at what is happening with sexual abuse and with incest and with physical abuse, emotional abuse, the ripples in the pond, the stuff that it causes. Okay, they're now looking at some of the prisons and jails now have a question to ask. So were you abused as a child? And you look at people who are in prison for different crimes, the rate of people abused is extremely high. People doing intake for drug addiction are now starting to ask, even on
oh, what's his face? He had Mackenzie Phillips in that celebrity detox thing. Doctor, who's that guy?
Dr. Oz?
No, who was the guy who had the big celebrity detox? Yeah, he on his show, in fact, and it first came out that he started doing that when Mackenzie Phillips did his show.
Dr. Phil.
Not Dr. Phil, the other guy. Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew.
Okay.
Even Dr. Drew started doing this, and it was when Mackenzie Phillips did his show after she was on heroin again. So, and he started asking people, so were you abused sexually or physically as a child? And it was like, well, it was like 10 for 10. They go, oh, can I talk to you in the other room with the camera? Oh, okay. And that's the thing. They're seeing that people have severe drug abuse problems, severe alcoholism, when you start going, so on this checklist of things that might have possibly been stressful, were you sexually abused? Like, yes. People, homeless people, if you talk to homeless people, the percentage of people who are sexually abused is the terrible problems that it causes to the synapses in the brain. This guy, Dr. Bruce Perry, who's a genius, he's written several books. One of the things that happens, like, okay, if you think about the fact that when you're a little kid, you're learning to tie your shoes, say, right? Or stack blocks, or do things that are like, that you don't think about, hand-eye coordination, etc. And this is, your brain is creating the neural pathways to do that over and over again, so that you don't have to think about tying your shoes. But imagine if at the same time that's happening, you're also being terrorized and learning to run and scream and hide and being sexually abused and physically abused. That's building neural pathways as well at the same time. So the neural pathways of that fight or flight and being horribly abused are carved into your brain, just as reading and writing and stacking blocks and tying shoes. It's in your head. So when people talk about recovering from abuse, it's not just about, it is physical. Technically I have brain damage. It's terrible, but it's the neural pathways are carved. And there's things you can do to lessen this. But that's why when people go, why don't I just get over it? Because you actually have things inside your head. These pathways have been carved. And it's quite the to-do to, alleviate that and build so many new neural pathways. That's why like music therapy is great, because you do lots and lots of neural pathways, learning stuff. Okay, so I went back to school and learned French, because I do this crazy show in France in French. I had a neurologist tell me, learn a third language, you'll never get Alzheimer's, it's great. It's really good for you. And doing a one-woman show, talking about your life, writing your autobiography, all the neurologists, I was at a conference, told me, oh my God, some of our patients, that's how we make progress with them. We get them to tell their life story in order, even if it's like, on index cards. And so telling your life story helps the neural pathways. There's all sorts of things, but it does cost. There's a thing online you can look up, something about the prior negative experience quotient or whatever, and this is a big thing now with doctors, where it's a list, and it's like having a parent in prison, being sexually abused, all these kind of like bad things. If your score is high, you have a higher percentage of likelihood of heart disease and numerous other illnesses. It's not good. My score is terrible on that. Terrible. It's like, but luckily somebody came out with another questionnaire that was the resilience factor, where you answered questions, see what factors did you have in mental and emotional resilience that might cause you to not have this. And my resilience score was really, really super high. So luckily I scored the high and the two tests, and they canceled each other out. So hence I'm still alive.
Is that why you went into your comedy routine? And is that why you wrote a book?
I didn't realize it. I knew I had.
The book, by the way, is a New York Times bestseller.
Yes, and it made the French bestseller list as well. I started doing comedy. I just had this urge to do it, to get up and tell these jokes. I always use comedy and like jokes as a defense mechanism, or as one of my shrinks said, who says you can't defend yourself? So that definitely was a part of it. And then I wrote the book because I just had to, people dying to know all these stories. And then I did the show, but literally I've been doing the show for a while. When I went to a child abuse conference because of Protect, and I met all these neurologists who went, "You're doing what?" And they were like, "That's brilliant." And I'm like, "Didn't you know?" And I'm like, "I had no, that's probably why I feel better." And they're like, "No, that's a good thing to do." So
this is a strange thing to think about, but what kind of opposition have you gotten from doing Child Protective Services? I mean, I think you told me a story once about being chased out of a hotel.
Well, I did. I had to get out of New York. Those people were. But in Sacramento, we had to take a backup. Bikers Against Child Abuse. We wound up having the bikers gang with us as like protection because it was so crazy. The people. Well, when I first day, I went to Sacramento, and Paul Peterson, who helps Next Child Starts, he drove the car, and we went up there, a bunch of people. And we met with these two guys, these lawyers. He said, well, they're lobbyists, and they've done some stuff for SAG. They'll probably help us. What he didn't know was they were lobbyists for the Criminal Trial Defense Attorney Union. So they, in fact, had already signed on to defend the incest exception. They were working for the other team. And we didn't know that. And so we're sitting there in a Starbucks having breakfast with these two yo-yos. And they said, oh, yeah, why are you here? And they'd met Paul a couple times. And they said, well, I'm here about, Senate Bill, blah, 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 blah. And they went, oh, no, we're opposed. We're going to shut that down. It's like, Paul's like, you're opposed? You're trying to keep the incest exception? We're like, yeah. And they were so in your face about it. And then he said, lady, your bill's not going anywhere. We have a deal in place. You don't know who you're dealing with. I was like, ooh, okie dokie.
That's a gauntlet.
The worst part was, he got all like creepy condescending, and he was like, you women and you mothers come up here with your personal problems and try to get love, and I'm like, oh, you want to think about who you're calling mother, buddy, listen. And he was so rude. And going on, I wound up at one point was going over. Paul Peterson had the back of my pants because I was going like I was over the table, going to go for at one point. It was like the lady by the back of the pants. I was like, listen, buddy. But he said, no, your bill will never make it out of committee. We have a deal in place. This will be killed in committee. I can assure you that. We've already signed the papers and cut a deal. I was like, really? So of course I took that guy. Luckily, our gang of Protect, we're not exactly a bunch of moms knitting in a room. We had some really hard-ass people, so we're like, this will be interesting. And we did, and Robin Tyler, the lesbian activist, got on board, and she and half of BACA showed up in the senator's office and screamed at her. It's like Robin Tyler and a bunch of bikers. I would be terrified. And so it just got, all these people started getting on board, and it was crazy because they found a guy from the ACLU, should have been our side, but it was Northern California ACLU, this one guy, who apparently was pro-child molester rights and was on their side. So we found someone from the national board of the ACLU who went, no, we're not defending fathers raping their children, that's not a thing. And she came and testified for us. We had like dueling ACLU, that got crazy. It was out of a movie. It was the nuttiest thing, but it got really weird. We met some really creepy, scary people who were telling us you don't know who you're dealing with, you don't know who signed this into law, you don't know who's behind this. I'm like, I'm in the frickin' Pelican Brief. I'm like, my car's gonna blow up or something. And we later found someone who they found a 700-page transcript of the hearing when the law was put in place. And it all had to do with getting all these guys remanded to therapy, but only to this one therapist who ran this one center. He was best friends with the senator who pushed to have the incest exception put in, and the best friend of the senator ran a therapy center that got all of the people that he sent to them, and he made over $2.5 million a year. About $2.5 million a year, I think he was getting out of that. So yeah, it was money. It was follow the money. It was absolutely had to do with money, and we were like, ah! But we won because most people have no idea what state laws are currently up there being voted on, being passed, being not passed. So you can't keep track of them all. But there is a website. You can totally, the whole you can totally go to the Sacramento website. You go to the website of your assembly person. You can look up all of the bills, what phase they're in, who voted what. You can look up your guy and see what they voted on everything. So it's there, and you'd be shocked to see what's going on up there half the time. But then they became scared of it. What was the best one was the senator's assistant, the aide, who said to me and this other woman, okay, here's the bottom line. No one in Sacramento gives a shit that you were molested. And she's just trying to prepare us. But I thought, well, that's pretty upfront. But then I went on Larry King, and we came back. And they so gave a shit. It was just, when I saw her again, she was like, do you want coffee, tea? Can I get you some water? I was running around going, one lump or two. And I'm like, this is the person who told me, I was just getting a cup of coffee now. Okay. So yeah, it was crazy. It was out of the movie, and stuff we had to go through. It started, each state we did, it got slightly easier because they all called each other and said, this is when the crazy people from ProtectCom just signed whatever the hell they had.
They got Nellie Oleson.
They got Nellie Oleson, which will go to the papers. Yeah, the New York Post. It got really ugly in the New York Post in New York. That was nuts. So, yeah, that was terrible.
So do you think you'll write another book?
Well, you sound like my agent. Yeah.
Do I get 15%?
Yeah, you should. Yes, I keep starting the second book. I have like a bunch of stuff written. It's like, figuring out how to write the second book. But it's like, should it be this? And then I get distracted because there's this cookbook I'm working on because I can't stop writing the cookbook. So obviously my character could not cook on the show. And yes, people from Little House do cookbook. Melissa Gilbert did a Little House cookbook, classics, got the cinnamon chicken in it, yeah, the whole thing. So I want to write a cookbook for people who don't know how to cook. Really simple, and it's going to be called Who's Going to Do the Cooking? That was the classic line, who's going to do, and it'll have some really great, simple recipes that literally anyone can do. And then, I don't know, we'll have like croquembouche or something.
Just throw it in
recipe no one can make, so something like that will be very fun. But I'm working on a cookbook, and I'm working on a second book. And then I've been writing these weird short stories. I'll have to send you some of that.
Well, speaking of short stories, there's one from your past called Otis the Sheep. Your first professional credit.
I was published! I was like 5. I was published.
It's as you describe it, it's a Jabberwocky homage. And what do you remember of Otis the Sheep? And what can you present us as an example?
Otis the Sheep lived in Googleville, and there was no Google yet, and I came up with Googleville. I just want to say that, the name Google, there was no Google company, and I said Googleville, and I was like 6. My psycho brother was a teen idol. He was in Tiger Beat and was on the show, and so he was always doing something. He had like a brief pop thing for 20 minutes, and he was always being asked to write songs. And one day he was bored and said, "So, want to write a song?" And so he'd come up with Otis the Sheep. I don't know why. It was called Otis the Sheep, and so I wrote some of the verses. Otis the Sheep, I remember, lived in Googleville, and then it was a lot of very strange. It was very Jabberwocky with strange words. And then they published it. It was in like 16 magazines, a bunch of magazines, and then it never got recorded. It's out there somewhere. But I would have the publishing rights because I am credited. It was published. There was some label that had it, and there Alison Arngrim. I absolutely, if somebody records Otis the Sheep, I totally get the royalties. I have the publishing on that.
One day you'll get that infamous royalty check.
But I was published at Fawn because I've been getting interviewed since I could talk because people with my family were interviewing people, and then I got published again because during the AIDS thing, I wrote an article for Designers West magazine. They had a deal with AIDS Project Los Angeles for somebody from the hotline and speakers to write an article, so I did that, and I wrote an article that was in which one was it? Not the Advocate, no, the I can't remember.
Yeah.
Frontiers!
Thank you.
I had an article in Frontiers, that's what it was. So yeah, so I sort of, but I wrote a song when I was 5 and it was published. I have published that. It was horrible, that was recording.
At this point in your life, do you ever get starstruck? And by who? Who would you just like be a puddle to meet?
I met freaking Ted Neely at the autograph show last week.
Ted Neely, the original Jesus Christ
I met
Superstar?
Jesus.
He was my first interview.
He's awesome!
He was my first
Is he
interview.
the nicest freaking
He
person?
really is. 2008 I interviewed him.
So, Yvonne Elliman, and he did the Jesus Christ. It was, okay, there was like a Leave It to Beaver reunion table, Police Academy table, Little House table, and the Jesus Christ
Jesus table.
And so I'm sitting there signing things, and I asked my friend David, who was there, I said, go over and see what Jesus is signing for, how much he's charging for autographs these days. And he said, hey, $20. I said, oh, that's good, the good price. So he went over and he said, he's really nice. It's like he's Jesus. People are coming up to him because he played Jesus Christ Superstar, going, ah, and having like major religious experience and like emotional meltdowns. And he's like, yes, he's totally like, he's learned to handle it after all these years. He's going, there, yes, and like helping him all this. One woman almost fell down. He was literally holding her up in the coffin, but yes, it's okay. And I was like, this guy is good. And then I go to a huge Little House fan. Hugs me, oh, it's so wonderful. So I have it now. I was texting my friends. Yes, we have confirmation. Jesus loves Nellie. And he's really awesome. And I bought his CD. And then we were doing every possible joke. Because then, like, Bob showed up later, and I said, if I take you to meet him, am I bringing you to Jesus? So we did every possible bad joke. He wasn't there right away on Sunday morning. We said, oh, someone has rolled the stone away. Nicest person, and he was saying we should get together, blah, blah, and then Bob and he's so sweet, and he said, I'm going to ask you the question everyone asked me, because, he's still doing Jesus Christ Superstar. He does these revivals. He was off to Italy. They're doing it in Rome. He goes, well, this still works, so I still get to sing, and I'm still doing the show. So
68 years old, playing a man who died at 33.
Right? And he's like, he could be Moses now. And so he's touring the world with this thing, and he said, who knew? And he said, I'm going to ask you what everyone asked me. He said, so when you started your show, did you know it was going to be a hit? Did you know? And I was like, no, none of us knew. Nobody on Settle. We had no idea. If you told us 45 years later, we'd be talking about Little House on the Prairie, we'd be showing in 140 countries. Never in a million years. He said, exactly, because Jesus Christ Superstar, never in a million years did we think this would be going on. So he's got the same kind of thing. And then we're talking to him, and the whole thing of Protect came up. Well, he went bananas. I told him about Protect. And he said, so when I get back and we talk, can I do a benefit? What can I do? How can I help? So if Jesus on board, that's he's pretty cool. So we're going to talk to him, and he's great. And then I gave him my book. So yes, and his producer. And I got a copy of the DVD. They did the documentary of the whole tour, making of. But yes, I was completely got it. I have several celebrities that I'm very excited to meet. That's why if I do the autograph show things, like, who's here? Jill St. John! I met Jill St. John. I got an autograph picture of her in that little fabulous sleevey thing she wore in Diamonds Are Forever. It's like my favorite James Bond movie, and Jill St. John was there, and she didn't charge me. She gave me the money back. I was totally good. But she was a fan. So. But yes, no, I told absolutely. There's all sorts of celebrities.
We have a couple of questions, and I'm going to turn you over to the audience.
Oh yes, we've been talking for hours. What time is it?
It's 5:25.
Oh, good Lord. Okay.
So I'm going to ask you. You've done stage performance before. You were in 10 Little Indians. You were in the Vagina Monologues.
And then there were none, as they call it now.
And then there were none.
Because it's been 10 little terrible things in a row. But it's awful.
And then tomorrow you were leaving for Connecticut to perform in Forever Patsy Cline.
It's Patsy Cline. I'm getting up at crack of doom tomorrow because I'm going to Connecticut to a place called the Sharon Playhouse in Sharon, Connecticut. It's very nice, and these new guys just took it over, and they're really I think they have Rex Smith in Barefoot in the Park right now. Is that happening? And then Sally Struthers has been going all over the country with this woman named Carter Calvert doing this show called Always Patsy Cline. And it's based on a true story where there's this kind of slightly crazy woman named Louise, who is a giant Patsy Cline fan. It's just like, and she sings how I always wanted to sing. She's kind of a little stalkery. But then she meets Patsy Cline, winds up inviting her back to her house because it's like too late to get a cab. She and Patsy hit it off. They become great friends. Patsy says, I'm going to write to you. She's like, oh yeah. They become pen pals to the day that Patsy dies. They're like getting phone calls. She becomes Patsy Cline's best friend, and they did phone calls and letters. So it's adorable. And then, and then she dies, talks about how, like, always, so it's always Patsy Cline. And it's like 2 one-woman shows. And so Sally Struthers, I don't know, ran off, got another gig for the month. I kind of like understudying Sally Struthers. Weird, but she's a nice girl. So Carter, who does that, this woman can sing like Patsy Cline, like you would not believe. Basically what happens is I come out and I go ranting on about how I am this crazy person named Louise and how much I love Patsy Cline. And then she comes out and sings, and then I go, and then she sang, I Fall to Pieces. And then she shows me sings, I Fall to Pieces. And we do this for like 2 hours, and we tell the whole story of their friendship. But it's like if someone had a one-woman show where she was Patsy Cline, and someone had a one-woman show where she was Patsy Cline's #1 cuckoo fan, and then they squished the 2 shows together. And I'm going to be doing this for a month in Sharon, Connecticut. You can come see me. It's going to be lovely. It's very fun.
The last question I have for you is, will there ever be a Little House reboot? I know you get that one a lot.
And normally we've seen that we came, so there's a moment in the 90s, this close, NBC actually called everybody. And we all said yes. We all said yes, and I said, oh, Melissa Sue Anderson won't do it. She called back before you did. Bitch, jumped to the phone before you did. Oh my God. So we would all do it. But the legal entities involved, it's ridiculous. Now the other thing is now it's like pretty much everybody's dead. So if you're doing original cast, I don't know, maybe cameos. The kids are all still alive. So we say Little House, no arrests, no convictions. We're very proud. Yeah. And Karen's still kicking, and Charlotte, of course, Stuart still kicking, we have the whole gang there. But the problem is you have the estate of Laura Ingalls Wilder, then you have HarperCollins Publishing, then you have Ed Friendly, or Trip Friendly, his son's now Friendly Productions, who the people originally developed it for TV. Then you have the estate of Michael Landon, because he had a whole piece of the show. And then you have Lionsgate, who put the DVDs, and you have NBC Universal, who of course produced it, and NBC Universal has the rights. So NBC Universal and Lionsgate, the estate of Michael Landon, estate and Trip Friendly, and the HarperCollins, the estate of Laura Ingalls, would all have to sign off in one like big stadium of people signing to make this sense. That's why it's not like just, well, we can whip it out as like one guy or something, like a Norman Lear show. We go call Norman Lear and he says yes, and then you're done. Now they are, however, doing reboots of everything. What do we got? The One Day at a Time reboot,
which is done very well.
Fuller House. There's like
it's rebooting Alf.
They're rebooting Alf.
Yeah.
Why in the name of
they're rebooting
God?
Buffy.
Buffy. Oh, they can
They're
have Dean
rebooting
Butler back.
Buffy.
Dean Butler, who was Alonzo Little House, was Buffy's dad, so maybe he.
Oh, that's
can
right. That's
awesome.
right.
We love He's very nice. But yeah, they're doing reboots of things that are just like, you're what? So I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to circle back. The other thing is that Trip, Friendly, the producer with me, Trip is obsessed, as his father Ed was, of doing a feature film of Little House. Which could be pretty, but the fans are like, unless it's exactly like this, we don't want to know. So it's really difficult because it's going to get compared to the show, and it's going to lose. Because we were amazing. And they keep
9
saying
seasons versus 2 hours.
Yeah, what are you going to do? And everyone's going to be going, they've got Michael Land and a Melissa Gilbert in their heads. It's going to be very, 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 very difficult to do a movie of it. They keep saying, well, we'll do a different part. We're going to do like Little House in the Big Woods, Little House in the Prairie, not Banks of Plum Creek. We'll do like the early part. But it's like, oh, that means no Nellie Oleson. Oh, yeah, nobody's buying a ticket to that. So it's got a lot of problems, but they keep wanting to do it. I'm like, it's not going to work. So since it has not happened, is now literally, my God, it must be going on 12 years that he's been shopping this movie. And every few years, you'll see in the Reporter or Variety, new screenwriter signed, Little House in the Prairie movie is greenlighted. And they get a screenwriter, and they hire a director. And this circles around for about a year and a half, and then they drop it. And then another studio to announce another screenwriter and a director have been hired at a different studio. And this goes on for about 2 years, and they drop it. It's gone on for decades. So I don't think the movie's getting made. But now since they're rebooting freaking Elf, if they're rebooting everything, perhaps they will circle around and perhaps he will say, okay, if you let me oversee the reboot, and it's, obviously, if they did it, if whatever they did, and they called any of the cast members from Melissa Gilbert on down, everyone would say yes. We're such whores. It's just, it's everyone, even cast members who, if you interview them, would go, I would never do a reboot. If that phone rang, and they said, we're shooting Monday, they're like, oh, how fast can I get done? Yeah, no, they'd all do it. They'd all do it in a heartbeat. It's terrible.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll turn Alison Arngrim over to your audience.